It is time once again to take a trip back in the past, going all the way back to 1993, the year that I turned 21 years old, the year that I was still living with roommates outside of Worcester, Massachusetts, still working for the long-distance phone company AT&T. Life was pretty good as I was starting to round the corner to one of the last major milestones of my young life. So in this episode of Print from the Past, we go back to early spring, March 1993 to be exact, as we open up a brand new copy of Electronic Gaming Monthly from 1993 featuring, you guessed it, Star Fox. Let's go ahead and take a look. We do have a free guide included here as well. It's a video game preview guide, and we'll take a look at that as well. But we got to open it up in order to take a look at it, so let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to try and keep this right on camera so you can see. And there we go, it just peels right along the top. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take this out. And we're going to put this down here. And I think we're going to take a look first at the preview guide, which is this guy right here. The preview guide features Alien 3 on the back, which I believe is an LJN game. The Angry Video Game Nerd's favorite brand. So we have a look at over 300 different games in this preview guide. And yeah, it's very colorful. We have Out of This World and we have Muhammad Ali Boxing featured on the very first two pages. It's just more of an advertisement to start. And then we get going and we start talking about the Winter Consumer Electronics Show from 1993. Now remember, E3 was not yet a thing in 1993. CES was basically where we got our video game announcements from. So that's where EGM and GamePro and all of the video game magazines would send press to these events to let us know about the games that were coming that would soon be playing, whether it would be in a few months or even a couple of years. So we see here a virtual reality set for the Genesis, which I don't know if that was really a thing, but you can see that even back in 1993, VR was still very much a thing and people were excited about it. We also have here playing games on TV eyeglasses, so kind of a precursor to Google Glass as the case might be. Sega's first virtual VR cart will be a conversion of their virtual racing arcade game, and you can see that kind of picture down there at the bottom. So we have quick looks at new CD systems, talking about Pioneer's Laser Active CD, talking about Sega CD, the failed Super Nintendo CD add-on, and more. Sega talking about their Virtua line, including their Virtua VR headset that you see right there, as well as Virtual Racing here. Nintendo was all about Star Fox at this point, and Turbo Technologies was still around. We were still talking about the Turbo Duo in 1993, and we were showing off John Madden Football 93 and Lords of Thunder at that point. When we turn the page over, we have our list of games beginning, including our look at the 3DO, and I have talked at length about the 3DO before. A console that I think was ahead of its time, and unfortunately the price hamstrung it a little bit. But in all honesty, before the PlayStation and the Saturn came out, it was the 3DO. It was this guy right here that really opened the door to the fifth generation of consoles and showed us what some of that capability would be like. So when we take a look at that, we see photos of Jurassic Park, and we also see some golf. Road Rash 3DO is listed here. So before it was just changed to Road Rash, they actually had the name of the console included as well. And we have our first look at the Super Nintendo, and we have games like Toys and Mortal Kombat featured here as well. Of course, Mortal Kombat for the Super NES was highly sanitized versus the arcade version. We know the story. There was not any blood in the game. It was more sweat, and they altered some of the fatalities to be more family-friendly, which is something that the Sega Genesis did not do. And that is a story for another time. T2, the Judgment Day, the Incredible Crash Dummies are here, and we just have games for days. Look at all of these games that were coming out during this year, 1993. Just listing some of them that at least are notable to me. Run Saber, which is very rare now. Yoshi's Cookie, Final Fight 2. MVP Football was not very good, by the way. Lester the Unlikely, another Angry Video Game Nerd callback. We have more games on the next page. And again, just looking at all of these games is enough to make you excited for the future, because you just got that one screenshot and that one capsulated piece, like those 30 words or whatever it was, but that was more than enough to get you excited if that one screenshot really blew you away. Looking at some more of these titles, we have Dragon Warrior 5, which unfortunately didn't happen. Seventh Saga is listed here. Dig and Spike Volleyball, which, by the way, is a hidden gem, and you should pick that up if you like sports games. Super Bomberman is here. Super Shadow of the Beast is here. Rock and Roll Racing, which just got re-released for the Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Switch. We also have Tough Enough and Brawl Brothers are here. Super Empire Strikes Back, the follow-up to the very popular Super Star Wars game. And we can keep going. We have another, this is just all wall-to-wall games. Just an absolute ton to look at here. Konami's NFL Football, a game that I have talked about on camera before. The game that I was so excited about because it used Mode 7 rotation and scaling, but the game is crap. Mario is Missing. Vegas Stakes is here. I really like Vegas Stakes. It is a fun, chill-out game, whether it's for the Super Nintendo or for the Game Boy. Mr. Nuts, Doomsday Warrior, which is now available on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System app for the Switch. Even more games. We're about halfway through, and the screenshots and the list just continues. Cliffhanger, Dracula, Final Fantasy Adventure 2, which unfortunately didn't get released here, but that was the follow-up to Secret of Mana, I believe. Actually, that was Secret of Mana, I'm sorry. Final Fantasy V, which never got released here. We know about that story. Duck Dodgers, Superman, Tasmania, which is another hidden gem, by the way. If you like racing games, you might want to give that one a try. Sonic Blast Man, Mecha Robot Golf, one of the worst sports games of all time. And we have one more listing of Super Nintendo games over here before we get to the Genesis stuff. And it's a pretty decent back page. Super Battletoads is here, Global Gladiators is here, and Super Caesar's Palace is here. So then we get to the Genesis, and the Genesis is going to share a lot of titles in common with the Super Nintendo because multi-platform development was a thing in 1993. While we were seeing some exclusives, we were seeing a lot of multi-platform releases because third-party developers wanted to have their cake and eat it too. So they wanted games for the Super Nintendo and the Genesis to try and make money. Power Challenge Golf is listed here, and again, here is another look at the Genesis pages as they have those in that royal purple that I really like. Mortal Kombat is here. Tony La Russa Baseball is here. George Foreman KO Boxing. Rocket Knight Adventures, which wound up being a neat little gem. Tiny Toon Adventures. Rolling Thunder 3. Splatterhouse 3. Elemental Master. Cyborg Justice. Cool Spot. And the list just goes on, as you see here on this next page here. I mean, we just have a ton of games to look at, and that makes it great, honestly, is seeing that there are so many games to look at here. G-Lock, Indiana Jones, Landstalker, Outrun 2019, which, X-Men, Blaster Master 2, which wasn't so great, unfortunately. Hit the Ice is here, MiG-29, Wayne's World, Strider 2, Chi-Chi's Pro Golf, and we have a bunch of game tech titles here as well. All of those and more for the Genesis. And then we have Sega CD. Sega CD in 1993 was definitely a thing. I owned one in 1993, and it was promising. Mortal Kombat. Who Shot Johnny Rock? There's a game here listed called Gallagher's Gallery. Does that still exist? Man, Gallagher's Gallery. Let me see. Gallagher is your host in the wackiest shooting game around. Shoot watermelons, alarm clocks, and model airplanes in the circus-like arenas. Occasionally, Gallagher may show up and offer you advice while shooting. Well, that's interesting. That's coming from American Laser Games, the team behind a lot of arcade light gun games like Who Shot Johnny Rock and Mad Dog McCree. Both of those games, by the way, were coming out for the Sega CD, as well as Space Pirates. Road Avenger is here. Sonic CD, Batman Returns, Afterburner 3, Echo the Dolphin. And we have another full page worth right here, plus you can see the beginning of the Turbo Duo section. Joe Montana Football, Sylphied VR. Sylphied, by the way, one of my favorite Sega CD games. Hook, Terminator, CNC Music Factory. Well, they can't all be winners. Virtual VCR Prince. I don't know if that was a thing either. Maybe somebody in the comments can let me know. We still had some games coming for the Turbo Duo. Bonk's Adventure 3, Super Air Zonk as well. That's what Zonk CD would wind up becoming. We also have Dungeon Explorer 2, Dungeon Master Gradius 2, or Gradius 2, however you want to pronounce it. Power Golf 2, Record of Lodoss War, Spriggan, Cosmic Fantasy 3, Vasteel, King of the Monsters 2, World Heroes, John Madden Football, Sim Earth, Tecmo World Cup is listed here, and more. And finally, as I told you, the NES was still kicking in 1993, and we do have some games for it to show in this guide, including DuckTales 2, Mighty Final Fight. Street Fighter 2 is listed as an NES game. I don't think that came out here. Kid Clown, Kirby's Adventure, Casino Kid 2, Fire and Ice, which just got released for the Nintendo Entertainment System app for the Switch, Battletoads Double Dragon, Jurassic Park, and more. And then, of course, we have some ads on the back. So already in the first 10 minutes, I have gone through a ton of games, and we haven't even looked at the main magazine yet. So when you get this in the mail, or when you went to Walden Books or Barnes & Noble, or wherever you got your video game magazines from, this already got you excited. And you weren't even to the main event yet, which is this guy right here. So let's go ahead and open it up. We'll take it page by page. And the first thing we see is a 2-page spread for Tiny Toons for the Genesis. By this time, Konami was starting to produce games for the Genesis as well as the Super Nintendo. So a lot of similarity between the Super Nintendo and the Genesis games, with some differences thrown in, although you did see more different games such as Castlevania Bloodlines as well. Nintendo or Sega, who is number one? Ed Senrad writes a nice little essay talking about CES and what he thought of the show. Nintendo had a great year. Has Sega learned anything? Nintendo projects that their Super NES system sales this year, in 1993, could approach the all-time yearly single-platform record of 8 million units. That's what they were projecting at that point in 1993. We also have an ad here for Bart's Nightmare, which is a nightmare to play if you haven't played it before. You have an ad here for Out of This World. I'm not really going to get too much into the ads unless there's something that really reaches out to me. So you could still get back issues of EGM over here on this side. I think as far back as they go with the number one. So the premiere issue you could buy for $30. You can probably charge about 5 times that for an Electronic Gaming Monthly number one at this point. They had 1, 4, 7, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, and 19, among others. There's an ad here for Hook as well. Like Hook on the Sega CD. I didn't like it so much for the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. I think just because of more of a movie tie-in, taking advantage of the extra storage on the CD-ROM. An ad for Bubsy for the Genesis and Super NES. As you see, our favorite Bobcat with a shirt, fielding questions from the press. Is the fur still flying between you and Roseanne? Because pop culture from 1993 never gets old. Did you get those ears from Ross Perot? Is it a fact that you bit Barbara Walters? Does he know he's not wearing any pants? See, that is the thing that all of us should remember about Bubsy. He's got a shirt, not wearing any pants. No one understands why that was. Anyway, moving on. We have some letters to the editor here. Recently, I've heard Sega claim that the Genesis has a feature called blast processing. Sega also boasts that the Super NES doesn't have this technology. Could you please explain what blast processing exactly is? The editor's reply, quote, Sega is quite vague when it comes to giving away the exact meaning or procedure of their new technology. Such is the case about their exclusive blast processing mode. They put that in quotes, by the way. What they would say when questioned is that blast processing is the total power dedication of the Genesis system to giving a character on screen a very quick blast of speed. Wow, what a bunch of crap. This guarantees the fastest power punch ever delivered on a 16-bit system. Sega states that blast processing is like kicking the system into turbocharge. The first example of blast processing occurs in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 when Sonic or Tails get into their spin dash maneuver and bolt across the screen in a blink of an eye. Is it revolutionary? You tell us. Again, it's just crap. It is just the fact that the Genesis had a faster CPU speed than the Super Nintendo. That is all it is, and just making light of that fact. Street Fighter 2 is too easy, a couple of people say here. There's a Merry Christmas letter as well. We take a look at ads for Strike Gunner STG and for Q*bert. Q*bert on the Game Boy, by the way, I think is also a thing. That's Q*bert 3, but that's for the Super Nintendo. Street Fighter 2 for NES. All I seem to care about these days is Street Fighter 2. Again, in 1993, early 93, this is not a surprise. I am very interested in obtaining the NES version of this hot cart. None of the stores that I have contacted could find the game, but it must exist as you ran pictures of it a few issues ago. I think it came from Hong Kong or some other Asian country, as I know it wasn't from Japan. Is this an illegal cart, and that is why nobody got their hands on it? Or is this something I must order straight from Hong Kong? Here is the answer. The Street Fighter game that we ran pictures of was an unlicensed version of the game that was produced in Southern Asia. You are right, as such copies of the game are illegal, and that is why nobody can get the cart. Don't give up hope, though. In talking with the people at Capcom during Winter CES, we have found out that there will be a legal NES version. There will be a legal NES version of Street Fighter 2 coming out in the US later this year. That did not happen. Capcom has licensed the rights to do the game to yet announced Nintendo licensee. Exactly how much the game has to be cut back to fit into an NES cart would have to be at most 4 megabits of memory. So basically, Street Fighter 2 for the NES was going to be an improbability at best because of the corners that they would have had to cut. Now, granted, they did come out with Street Fighter 2 for the Game Boy, which is kind of the same. And if you've played that, you know that just didn't go well. And aside from the fact that you really had to make compromises, let's not forget that the Super NES controller had just 2 buttons and then 4 if you include the select and start button. Playing Street Fighter 2 that way was going to be very difficult regardless. Make your own. So make my video. There's an ad for that there with that crazy 90s font. Bad editorial, good editorial. So of course they're complaining or complimenting the magazine. More Sega RPGs. I've got a couple of questions for you. I really love my Genesis, but where are the RPGs? I bought the system a few years ago because of games like Phantasy Star 2 and 3 and Vermilion. Since then there's been nothing. Zilch. Back in June you talked about a game called Shining Force. Is this related to Shining in the Darkness, and will it ever come out over here? Asks Toby in Minnesota. We asked those very same questions of the head honchos at Sega when we interviewed them at Winter CES. Say the editors, good news. Not only will Sega be bringing out a US version of Shining Force this spring, but they will also give us the mega hot Landstalker this fall. And next spring we'll have Phantasy Star 4. So there you go. There are questions here about the Super NES CD-ROM. And we see a mock-up of the Super NES CD-ROM right there. And of course, that never wound up being a thing. They talked about it at Winter CES. In the past, the Big N would match and then outdo anything that Sega had to say about CD-ROM, but this time Peter Main, Vice President of Nintendo Marketing, said what these numbers indicate, 13.3 million Super NES, NES, and Game Boy systems and 76 million cartridges, is resounding support for the fact that the video game business is cartridge-based. So here you see that Nintendo is getting cold feet. We're going to continue to be that way for the foreseeable future. Our 8-bit NES, which has been on the market for 7 years, still represented more than 20 times the market of CD-ROM-based video games in 1992. So basically, that is Peter Main saying, but not directly saying, CD just is not going to happen. Lethal Weapon. Gore or no game, so we're still talking about the differences between the Super NES and Genesis versions of the game and the fact that the graphics and the content are going to be a little bit different. We have a game here called Cool Ball, which I don't know what that is. But there's your ad right there. 2-page spread for Flashback for the Sega Genesis. A game that looked very cool, but I could never get into it. Very much like Out of This World. I just couldn't get into those games for whatever reason. And we have our first review of the issue, and it is a Game of the Month for Lords of Thunder for the Turbo Duo. I cannot tell you how awesome it was to play Lords of Thunder back in 1993. I had a TurboGrafx 16 with a CD attachment that I bought from a place in Worcester, Mass. And I found out that you could upgrade that to basically being a Turbo Duo by buying something called a Super System Card 3.0. You can only order that from Turbo Technologies, which I did. I ordered it. I waited and waited and waited for it to come in, as well as Lords of Thunder and like the games that you got as part of the Super System Card package. And when they finally came in, I played Lords of Thunder all the time. Gate of Thunder, by the way, was on the initial CD that came with the Super System Card. Just a fantastic game in terms of soundtrack, in terms of challenge. It looked great in 1993, and honestly, you can play it you can play it still on the Wii U Virtual Console if you're willing to pay the $8 for it. I do recommend it. It's a great shooter, a little bit challenging these days as compared to what we see now, but nevertheless, the soundtrack is one of the best I've ever heard. So definitely play it if you can. Also have an ad here for the Capcom Fighter Power Stick that you see right there. More Super Nintendo reviews for Super Strike Eagle, Football Fury, and Toxic Crusaders. So Lords of Thunder got 2 8s and 2 9s for reviews. Super Strike Eagle got 2 6s and 2 7s. Football Fury from American Sammy got a 4, 7, 5, and 8. So those reviews are all over the map. Toxic Crusaders got a 5, 6, 7, and 8. So if you average those out, that winds up being I think 12 and 14, 26 divided by 4, so it's like a 6 point something. Sim Earth for the Super NES got 3 6s and a 7. We have a review here of Hardball 3 for the Genesis, which did not get very good grades, with the exception of one reviewer who gave it a 7. Said that Accolade has really pulled out all the stops in this cart. I like the 162 game season, the instant replay feature, and the realistic player movements. It really doesn't look all that great, and we'll talk about Mystic Quest here in a second. But the fact you could play a full season was definitely a big deal. And Hardball, I think they made some changes from the Commodore 64 original. But by adding more content, by adding more gameplay modes and adding more replayability, I think it makes the game worth playing. Is it problematic? Yes. Could it have been executed better? Certainly. But I think that the game is worth looking at if you're a baseball fan and you have a Genesis out there. Also, Risky Woods for the Genesis, 4543. We have an ad here. Brain transplant for $40. $40 for a Super Nintendo cartridge is pretty darn good back then. I have talked about Mystic Quest in the past. I will say again, for the record, I will die on this hill. Mystic Quest gets a bad rap. Mystic Quest did what it set out to do, which is basically be everyone's first RPG. If Final Fantasy II was too much for you, and honestly, that was the first RPG I ever played, and I didn't know to grind, so beating the final boss in the game took a lot of effort. But had I played Final Fantasy Mystic Quest first, I would have been better prepared for the experience that was Final Fantasy II, as opposed to just walking into it blind and just kind of figuring out as I went. There were some things in the game that I just didn't understand in terms of the gameplay systems, and I think that Mystic Quest would have helped out a lot in that regard. Roger Clemens MVP Baseball gets 2 6s and 2 7s. Championship Pro-Am from Trade West, which is a conversion of the rare popular RC Pro-Am, gets all 7s. Championship Pro-Am for the Genesis is worth looking at if you liked RC Pro-Am for the NES, by the way. Road Avenger gets 2 8s, a 6, and a 7. That is a full motion video game that has a lot of animation in it. What else do we have? World Sports Competition for the TurboGrafx 16 or the Turbo Duo gets 3 6s and a 7 and is not very good. It is not the track and field beater that it wanted to be. F-117A Stealth Fighter, which, oh, by the way, is available on the Switch. It's the NES port, basically. 2 4s and 2 5s is not very good. Break Time, which is a pool game, gets a 7 and 3 6s. There's an ad here for Top Gun Guts and Glory for the Game Boy. So if you conquered the first 2 Top Gun games on the NES, well, now you're in luck. You can take down bogeys while you are in your car or after school or wherever it is on the go that you happen to be. Flintstones for the Game Boy gets a 7, an 8, a 7, and a 5. Arch Rivals for the Game Gear gets 2 6s, a 5, and a 7. Dino Olympics for the Lynx. So now we're talking Atari Lynx here. 3 6s and a 7. There is a nice little attack ad from Sega picking on the Game Boy versus the Game Gear with a cute little puppy there. If you were colorblind, 12, what? 12, if you were colorblind and had an IQ less than 12, then you wouldn't care which portable you had. Wow, don't be mean to the dog. And yeah, the Game Gear looked better, but yeah, I think I would have chosen the Game Boy too. This was my favorite part of every EGM, is taking a look at the games that are coming out very soon. Look at all of these games being populated. There are so many different games to choose from, especially if you were a multi-platform owner or you had the Super NES and the Genesis both, then you were in great shape. There's an ad here for PGA Tour Golf 2, a game that I've opened up for unsealed in the past. One of the really fun PGA Tour golf games for the Genesis. I prefer 3 just a little bit more, but 2 is certainly no slouch. And by now, we are moved from EASN, the EA Sports Network, and we move to EA Sports branding, as you see here in this particular ad. EGM's Top 10s. Tecmo NBA Basketball is number 1 for Nintendo. Street Fighter 2 is number 1 for the Super NES. Number 1 for 6 straight months, by the way. Sonic 2 is number 1 for the Genesis. Sonic 2 is number 1 for the Game Gear. And Super Mario Land 2 is number 1 for the Game Boy. These are all of the games here. Maybe I'll take a picture and post it on Twitter for you guys to check out. I'm not going to read them all as we're already over 25 minutes in, but I love looking at this, and I would check off which games I had and which ones I wanted to add to my collection. Top 10 odd-looking video game characters. Toxie from Toxic Avengers at number 10. Blanca from Street Fighter 2 at number 9. Dizzy at number 8. The Lemmings at 7. Battletoads at 6. Air Zonk at 5. Robocod at 4. Q*bert at 3, ToeJam and Earl at 2, and number 1 is Ren and Stimpy. Tecmo has a double-page spread here with Super NBA Basketball on this side and Fire and Ice over here. Super NBA Basketball is really quite good and has Michael Jordan that you can play as rather than just creating him to be in the game, so that's a pretty big deal. Game and Gossip from Corman. Let's see what he's got. Let me see. Talking about virtual VR. As you're reading this issue, the Super NES CD-ROM is far from vaporware. The Ultimate Peripheral 93 is well into the final stages of design. And according to the ultra-secret paperwork smuggled out by some hard-working rebels, you too can feast your eyes on the latest marvel of Nintendo. A formal developers conference will gather soon, and the Q-Man will be there. Just like the M2 never happened. There's an ad here for Hardball 3, by the way, which came up for the Genesis and later for the Super Nintendo. An ad here for NHLPA Hockey 93 for the Super Nintendo, the very first hockey game that I played for the system, and unfortunately it was not a very good one with a slideshow-like frame rate, but still, it was what I had, so I enjoyed it for what it was. The Pioneer Laseractive CD player is listed here. I don't know much about the Pioneer CD system, if I'm being completely honest. And here is all the information about the Super Nintendo CD-ROM. So yeah, it looks like it was pretty close to being done. 8 megabits of DRAM, 1 megabit of PS RAM, 1 megabit of memory, 4 megabits of DRAM, 2 megabits of system ROM, a 32-bit RISC processor with a 21.477 megahertz clock speed, an 8 kilobit cache. I know that sounds like ancient, but back in 1993 it was impressive. Access time for the CD-ROM drive is 0.7 seconds with a maximum access time of 1.4 seconds. And they show like the schematic down here so you can see how it was supposed to work. But again, as we all know, that never wound up being a thing. Mystic Warriors, which is, I think, it's from Konami, actually. I haven't played Mystic Warriors myself, but that is a look at Arcade Corner. Wild Pilot from Jalico, a game I had not played, and Dino Rex by Taito, so 2 arcade games I have no experience with. As well as Pro Quarterback. Oh boy. All right. Crash and the Boys Street Challenge. You could win your share of $5,000 cash by playing the NES game and setting some records. An interesting way to approach an ad. Bill Kunkel is here, the game doctor, talking about sprites. I'm a great fan of your magazine, and I find your section particularly informative. My question is, when I read reviews of games, I constantly come across the term sprites. What is a sprite? When I read a review on a game, I'm thinking about getting it, and it says big chunky sprites. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? That's from Gareth in Australia. Bill answers, sprites are the animated characters which appear in video games like Mario or Sonic the Hedgehog or Bubsy the Bobcat. Early in the design of the first programmable video game systems, the developers saved tons of memory by making sprite or character animation a part of the basic hardware. Some early home computers like the Apple II series required large amounts of memory to animate characters because they had to be manipulated through an extensive programming code. So the Game Doctor section, by the way, it was only brief. It was only one page here with 3 questions, which is too bad. Bill Kunkel, an amazing individual. Some Hudson Soft games, of course, with moves from the Turbo Duo or Turbo Graphics over to the other systems who had a brighter future. We were seeing Adventure Island and Felix the Cat and other games coming for Nintendo systems, whether it was the Game Boy or the Super NES or the NES itself. The International Outlook shows us Ranma 1/2 Part 2 Hard Battle. The Fearsome Fortress from Jalco of Japan. Super Back to the Future 2, which never came out here, of course. Battle Soccer from Banpresto. Cosmo Gang The Puzzle from Namco of Japan. Kick some balls with World Trophy Soccer. Image Fight 2 from IREM. And Snow Brothers from Toa Planet of Japan. I think Snow Brothers came out here, didn't it? I think it did. Free T-Rex shirt. Buy 2 IRM games. We'll give you the shirt off my back. Dino City or Dinocity. Gun Force, Super R-Type, and the IRM Skins game. IRM was a really cool company with some great concepts for games, both in arcades and for consoles. Would have loved to have seen that Dino City t-shirt. Super Chinese World 2 and Black Hole Assault, which did make its way over here. Darius 3 for the Super Nintendo or Super Famicom. Golden Axe 3 for the Mega Drive, Sim Earth. So some of those games sound familiar and some of them, not so much. You have some tips and tricks for Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and Wonder Dog. Wonder Dog, you have all the level passwords. And the Supersonic and Debug mode for Sonic the Hedgehog is the lead tip this time around. Super Star Wars also with its secret debug trick. Go to the title screen and press these buttons in this exact order. AAAA, X, BBBB, Y, XXXXA, YYYYB. When you hear the Jawa yell, you'll know that the trick worked. It is not easy to do that trick, by the way, right away. You have to do some practice in order to get that working. Streets of Rage 2 with its secret options screen. You have to have controller 2 plugged in. Move the cursor with controller 2 down to the options and hold buttons A and B simultaneously. That's interesting. I didn't know about that one. More codes, which I'm not going to read here just for the sake of brevity, as we're already a full half hour in. But this was one of the cool things about getting these video game magazines at the time was we didn't have the internet. So in order to get these codes, you either had to read the magazine and memorize the code, or you just had to buy the magazine and you had access to the code whenever you wanted to use it. Here's an ad for Tiny Toons Buster Bust Loose for the Super Nintendo, a game that I really liked. This is a game that I rented from Blockbuster first, and because I enjoyed it so much, I did wind up going out and buying it for full price. The game is flawed, yes, but I love the way it looks, I love the soundtrack, and I was really pleased with the challenge in the game. So yeah, I like it. Now we look at the preview section. The first thing that we see is Mortal Kombat for all systems. So you can see the comparisons here. By this point, we were really getting ready and psyched for Mortal Monday, whether we had a Super Nintendo, a Genesis, a Sega CD, it did not matter. At least for the Super Nintendo, I think that the graphics didn't suffer quite as much. In the Genesis, they looked okay too. The sound is really where the Super Nintendo really excelled, because the Genesis had some issues with that sound chip. But nevertheless, if you liked Mortal Kombat, you were getting to play it on your console of choice in early '93. Mech Warriors here, we're not going to go into that really. Tiny Toons Buster Bust Loose, I talked about this game, I really enjoyed it. If you've played it before, you might know what I'm talking about. The soundtrack is really, really good. It's one of the soundtracks that I would put on a mixtape and listen to in my car. Family Dog. Man, that was a thing. I forgot that was a thing. But it is a thing. We also have an ad from Taito for Chase HQ 2, Sonic Blast Man, and Hit the Ice. So you can see those right there. We have a subscription card, which we'll put over here for right now. Virgin Super Slapshot. Not a very good game, unfortunately, and it looks very much like Mario Lemieux Hockey for the Genesis, which, again, not great. There's also an ad for Fatal Fury as well. Final Fight 2, the follow-up to Final Fight, and I actually like Final Fight 2 quite a bit. It is much better than Final Fight 3, which feels like it goes on way too long. I think that Final Fight 2 is a great follow-up and is a fun game to revisit today, and you can revisit it using the Wii U Virtual Console or using the 3DS Virtual Console as long as you have a new 3DS with which to buy the games from. There's an ad here for Shadowrun, by the way. I know that there are some fans of that game out there. And now we come to Star Fox. Right there, it's a shirt. I absolutely love Star Fox. Star Fox came out just before my 21st birthday. I turned 21 in 93. And I remember that there was a big, and I've talked about this before, there was a big competition you could compete in at malls all over the place where you played a specific competition cartridge and you had to get the highest score possible, and whoever got the highest score at each location would win a Star Fox jacket, and you had a chance to win even bigger prizes. And depending on how well you scored, you could enter a Star Fox pin or a Star Fox t-shirt. I had the jacket. I actually wore the jacket so much that it literally disintegrated. I don't have it anymore because it fell apart. I wore it all the time. The jacket was so cool that I wore it to JCPenney one day, or no, it was Sears one day, and the person working the Gametronics counter thought that I was a Nintendo rep and asked me if I need to come behind the counter. It was that cool to own. Star Fox is just a fantastic game. Granted, the visuals don't necessarily hold up today, but the music is still very good. The gameplay is great. You can play it on a variety of different platforms, whether it's the original Super Nintendo hardware or the Super Nintendo Classic, or even through the Super Nintendo app on the Switch or the Nintendo Switch online service. It's worth playing, and I will go to bat for it a million times. A lot of people put Star Fox 64 ahead of it. I'm not one of those people. Crazy as it may sound, and it's the same kind of thing with Donkey Kong Country versus Donkey Kong Country 2. A lot of people love the sequels, and that's great. But for me, I stick with the originals. The original Star Fox is the one that holds the biggest place in my heart, and the first Donkey Kong Country is the game that I will always remember as being the first purchase that I ever made when working for KB Toys in the Christmas season of 1994. So there's a look at Star Fox as it was getting ready to hit store shelves. I was definitely very excited for that because I wanted to practice. I wanted to be ready to play the game so I could go ahead and dominate the competition when it was time. Dragon's Lair for the Super Nintendo, if you want it. Don't know why you would. Super NBA Basketball for the Super NES. We talked about this already. This, much like Tecmo Super Bowl, is kind of like straddles the line between arcade and simulation. It does a great job with stat tracking, and like I said, the only game to have Michael Jordan in it once he got out of his regular NBA license and started to license himself into NBA games, which did not happen for a while after this. Batman Returns for the Super NES, another game that I could go on and on and on about. Even more than Final Fight, almost as much as Streets of Rage 2. I love Batman Returns. It is very much a Final Fight type side-scrolling beat-em-up, and one of the things I love about this game most of all is the ability to interact with the environment, to grab a character and to throw him into a pane of glass or throw him into a park bench and watch it shatter was the coolest thing. Not to mention the fact that the game follows the storyline of the movie very closely, and the soundtrack is almost note for note just like what Danny Elfman would do if you put it in chiptune form. Really, really good, and it's a game that if you own a Super Nintendo, you should be playing this game. You should look for it. It's not very expensive and is a lot of fun to play. The only drawback is single player, but I play games on my own, so that really doesn't bother me all that much. There is, real quickly here, there is a Turbo Graphics or a Turbo Technologies comic about Lords of Thunder here. And I'm not going to show everything, but just kind of show you what the artwork looks like. right there. Also, a little bit about Bomberman as well. We take a look at Splatterhouse 3 for the Genesis over here. And it is kind of eaten up by a NBA All-Star Challenge poster with Jam at Home before NBA Jam was a thing. This is not NBA Jam. This game sucks. NBA Jam is the legit stuff. Cool Spot and Rocket Knight Adventures for the Genesis are listed here, as well as Roger Clemens MVP Baseball. You can see those images right there. Hardball 3 and X-Men getting their time in Electronic Gaming Monthly here, as well as an ad for George Foreman's KO Boxing. And I talked about Hardball 3 already. I think it's decent. I think that the reviews here are a little bit harsh, but that's just me. I'm a little bit more forgiving of sports games than most. Mutant League Football. Man, that was this time. It came out in the spring, so late spring. It says here it can be available in May. Mutant League Football is a game that you really got to you got to pay a little bit of a penny for on the Genesis if you have a Genesis still, but it's a lot of fun to play. Basically takes the Madden football basics and adds some monsters and some other crazy stuff to make it more arcadey and over the top. There's also an ad here for Outrun 2019. Hard to believe 2019 is come and gone, and cars don't look like that. They don't have rockets attached to them like they did in Outrun 2019. Rolling Thunder 3. The Rolling Thunder series continues one more time on the Genesis. Rolling Thunder is a series I wish I liked and appreciated more, but I haven't found the will. Rolling Thunder and Rolling Thunder 2 in arcade form, or Rolling Thunder in arcade form and Rolling Thunder 2 in Genesis form are available in the, there's like a Namco arcade app that you can get for the Switch, and you can find those games available in that, as well as Splatterhouse. What else do we have here? Sonic CD and Sylpheed VR, which would just be known as Sylpheed. So we have our Sega CD titles here. Love Sylpheed. Sylpheed still holds up today, I think. Sonic the Hedgehog is a game that is very divisive. For me, it is just flat out confusing, but other people swear by it. I just wish I was one of those people. I'm not. Final Fight CD, which came out in spring of '93. A game that has a fully voiced intro that played better than any Final Fight game that we had at that point. Of course, now we can play the Final Fight arcade ROM, and it's basically just like we were playing back in arcades, but this was as close as we could get to Arcade Perfect back then, and we were happy to take it. Also, Batman Returns, which has some great music and great driving sequences. Road Avenger for the Sega CD. Talked a little bit about that and how it's an interactive cartoon, a lot of fun to play. Joe Montana's NFL Football, which unfortunately is not very good. We also have an ad for the Lost Vikings here as well. Beyond Shadowgate for the Turbo Duo and Terraforming as well. I don't know a lot about these games, so I don't have a real affinity to them, but there are the ads or the pages for them, so you can see. Legend of Hero Tanma for the Turbo Duo, as well as an ad for Jack Nicklaus Power Golf Challenge. Have an ad here for Sega CD from Scott Bayless, a CD developer at Sega, just trumping or touting all of the advantages of CD technology. It's a good try by Sega, I thought. There were some issues with resolution and how the full motion video wasn't really full motion, but still, I think it was a great attempt. And there were some really good games for it. And being a full motion video gaming fan like I am, I had a lot to like for the Sega CD, which is why I enjoy playing it. Tiny Toons Adventure 2 for the NES, so we're still talking about NES games at this point in 1993. Not as good as the first game, in my opinion. I've played it. It's okay, but it's not as fun. Battletoads and Double Dragon, the Ultimate Team for the NES, as well as an ad for Road Avenger. I like playing Battletoads Double Dragon for the NES, but it is expensive now, so if you want to play it, you got to pay a little bit of money in order to afford it. Mighty Final Fight is here, and we have an ad for Doomsday Warrior. Mighty Final Fight, very simplified version of Final Fight, but gets the job done on the NES, and you can play it on your 3DS or on your Wii U Virtual Console. but this was playable for the NES. And again, if you want to own that cart, you're going to be prepared to be paying some serious money for that bad boy. Kid Dracula for the Game Boy is here, as well as an ad for Gate of Thunder. Kid Dracula, now available, the NES version is available via the Castlevania Anniversary Collection for the Switch, the Xbox One, and the PlayStation 4. A collection that I easily recommend if you're a Castlevania fan at all. The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. We have seen this remade for the Switch, of course, but there is the original for the Game Boy right there. And it's the 35th anniversary of the original Legend of Zelda today, so happy anniversary to Link and the entire Zelda universe. Best wishes for more games coming down the pike. Going to be able to play Skyward Sword HD on the Switch a little bit later this year. So I know that fans are excited about that. Me, I'm playing Age of Calamity still, the Hyrule Warriors type game, which I'm enjoying immensely. Milon's Secret Castle for the Game Boy is here, as well as an ad for Super Strike Eagle for the Super Nintendo. What else we got? Spider-Man and Return of the Sinister Six for the Game Gear, as well as Arch Rivals for the Game Gear. So Arch Rivals was a thing for the Game Gear. It was already available for the Genesis, and of course for the NES. The home versions were okay, but honestly, if you want to play the arcade game, the best place to play it is the arcade ROM, which is available in Midway Arcade Treasures 2, or there is a Midway collection for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 that you can play the original Arch Rivals on as well. My voice is running out, so I got to finish this up here soon. EGM Lifestyle, so we're talking about movies and music and more. We have some comic books here. Mario's making movies, so we're talking about the Super Mario Brothers movie and all of its ugly glory. What else do we have here? And of course the EGM Marketplace, where you could, if you did mail order, you could buy pretty much any game you wanted, provided you wanted to pay and wait for the stuff to arrive. And last but not least, we have two more things. We have the International Scoreboard for the United States National Video Game Team. Super Smash TV, someone rolled over the score at 99,999,999. Kudos to them. That is not me. And finally, Game Over, as we take a look at the end of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So those of us, well, again, before the internet, if we couldn't beat the game, at least we could look to EGM to show us the endings for our favorite games. And that is a look at Electronic Gaming Monthly from March 1993. It is Volume 6, Issue 3. And another shout to the video game preview guide. I want to take some pictures of this and put that on Twitter, especially the Gallagher game, because I don't remember that being a thing. I'm curious as to whether that actually found the light of day or might be downloadable online somewhere. We will do more print from the past in the not too distant future. I have plenty of magazines to open. In the meantime, please take care of yourselves and each other. And until the next time, my friends, see ya.